Hey, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something that literally runs our digital lives: software testing. It's that crucial, kind of invisible process that makes sure the apps on your phone, well, that they actually work. You know that feeling, right? You're about to pay for something, book a ride, send a super important message, and boom, the app just freezes up. It is so frustrating. Well, believe it or not, there's a huge amount of work that goes into stopping exactly that from happening. So how do software teams actually find those critical bugs before they find you? Well, it all starts with two totally different ways of thinking about it. Two different philosophies, really. You've got static testing on one side and dynamic testing on the other. And honestly, getting the difference between these two, that's the key. It unlocks everything else we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's dig into those two core philosophies: static versus dynamic testing. All right, first up, static testing. The big idea here is that you're testing the software, get this, without even running it. No, really. You're looking at its parts, the code, the design documents, while they're just sitting there. The recipe analogy is perfect. It's like proofreading the recipe for mistakes before you even start chopping vegetables. You're trying to catch those big, fundamental problems right at the very beginning.
And then, on the complete flip side, you have dynamic testing. So if we stick with that cooking idea, this is where you actually cook the meal. You fire up the software, you click the buttons, you enter some data, and you just see what happens. Does the app actually do what it's supposed to when it's live and running? This is all about checking its behavior in action.
So let's take a closer look at static testing first. Now, it might sound a little, passive, but it is an incredibly powerful and proactive way to hunt down bugs.
It really breaks down into two main things. First, you have the human-led review. Think of this like a super structured peer review. You get another expert to put their eyes on the code, looking for logic flaws or stuff that was missed. And then you've got automated static analysis. This is where you use these powerful tools to scan the code for common mistakes, security holes, or just bad style. And it does this long before that code is ever run. It's all about mixing that human brain power with machine-level precision.
All right, that was kind of the appetizer. Now it's time for the main event: dynamic testing. This is where all the action is. And honestly, this is where it gets really interesting, because this one idea actually splits off into a few different approaches. See, it turns out there's not just one way to do dynamic testing. The approach you take really depends on your point of view. And it all comes down to one simple question: how much do you know about what's actually going on inside the software? This one question gives us what we call black box, white box, and even experience-based testing.
So let's start with that first perspective. This is all about testing from the outside looking in, putting yourself right in the shoes of the person who's actually going to use the software.
This is what we call black box testing. Sometimes you'll hear it called behavioral testing. And the name is just perfect. Imagine the software is this totally sealed, opaque box. You have zero idea how it works on the inside. All you can do is give it an input, like you push a button, and then you check the output to see if it's what you expected. The process itself is actually pretty simple, but really powerful. You start with the rules. That's the requirements document that basically says, when a user does X, then Y should happen. So you go ahead and do action X. That's your input. And finally, you check the output. Did Y actually happen? Did the right screen pop up? It is 100% focused on what happens on the outside, not the mechanics on the inside. Now, you can't possibly test every single thing a user could do, right? So to do this efficiently, testers use these really clever strategies like equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis. These are just systematic ways to pick a small number of tests that are the most likely to uncover hidden problems. It's all about getting the most bang for your buck, the most coverage with the least amount of work.
Okay, so black box testing is absolutely essential. It has to be done because it's what the real user experience is. But it's still kind of a mystery, isn't it? So what if you could see inside the box? What if you had the keys? What if you could just pop the hood and see exactly how the engine is wired?
Well, that thought right there brings us to the second major philosophy of dynamic testing: the engineer's view.
And this is white box testing, or structural testing. Here, the box is basically made of glass. You've got the blueprints, you can see every single line of code, every fork in the road. You're not just asking if it works anymore. You're actually checking how it works and making sure the internal structure itself is solid.
So let's put them side by side. Black box testing, that's the user's view. You don't need to know any code, and you're just focused on the external behavior. White box, that's the engineer's view. You need full knowledge of the code, and your focus is all on that internal structure. They really are two sides of the same quality coin. And just like its counterpart, white box testing has its own set of special techniques. You'll hear names like statement testing, decision testing, path testing, and they're all designed to answer one big question. Did our tests run through every single line of code and every possible decision point? The whole goal is to leave no stone unturned inside the software. Okay, wow, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's pull all of these pieces together into one complete testing toolkit. This chart pretty much lays out the whole thing. At the very top, your first big choice is static or dynamic. If you go static, you're using reviews and those analysis tools we talked about. If you go dynamic, then you have to choose your perspective. Are you testing from the outside like a user? That's black box. Or are you testing from the inside like an engineer? That's white box. And then there's a third way, experience-based testing, which is where you rely on a skilled tester's own intuition to just explore the software and sniff out bugs that more structured tests might miss. This right here, this is your complete mental model for how to think about software quality. So, what's the most important thing to take away from all this? It's that you never just pick one. You don't. Really robust, reliable software, the kind you trust, it's built using a strategic mix of all these techniques. Each one finds different kinds of problems, and when you put them all together, they create this powerful safety net that protects the final user experience. So, the next time your banking app or your favorite game just works flawlessly, you'll have a little bit of an idea of the invisible architecture of testing that made that possible. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Now that you know the toolkit, which of these tests do you think prevents the most expensive bugs from ever reaching you? Think about that one. Thanks for joining The Explainer.